started with Chris Vaughan and the sky this month.
So I'm going to go through the events for the coming 5 weeks roughly, starting tonight. And there's quite a bit of interesting things to look at. The only downside is our nights are short. All right. First up, a little bit of news in space exploration. Space launches are becoming commonplace nowadays, but I did pick out a few of the more interesting ones that folks can maybe be attuned to or pay attention to. Sometime early in June, the Chinese will launch their Long March rocket with 3 Chinese astronauts heading up to the International Space Station. Then on June 6th, around 5:20 in the morning, Rocket Labs, who launched from New Zealand, will be launching their capstone mission. This is the Cislunar Autonomous Positioning System Technology Operations and Navigation Experiment. And what they're going to do is they're going to put a spacecraft into the same orbit that will be used by NASA's Gateway Space Station around the moon. So this is a really interesting mission. Sometime this month, we're expecting SpaceX to launch their Super Heavy Starship into an Earth orbital test. They'll attempt to orbit the Earth and splash down near Hawaii. And then finally, Chinese are back at it again sometime in July with a Long March rocket launching the second component to their building, they're growing a Chinese space station. So they'll enlarge their space station a little bit with that launch. Before I dip into observing, just take a minute to appreciate this fantastic star trails image taken by Bill Longo, who many of us know. On May 31st in the morning, he was up looking for the Tau Herculids and picked up a number of green firefly trails in addition to a few meteors. So if you're interested in helping contribute to science and monitoring the effects of the growing effects of light pollution around the world, you can participate in the Globe at Night project. And this is a group that collects observations of folks' local night sky. So essentially, during the period in question, so in this case, June 19th to 28th, they're asking everyone to head out and look at the constellation of Hercules, and then using some comparison charts that they provide for you, you can then determine just how faint the stars are that you can see from your location. Then you submit the results, and over time, this gets accumulated into light pollution maps, both in X and Y, the regional map, but also the change over time, so that additional dimension of information. In terms of the sun, right now, I do encourage folks to take a look at the sun if they've got safe solar observing equipment, safe white light filters, or solar telescopes. The sun is in an upswing in its activity. We're entering a new, building up to a new maximum. So due to that, if you have a chance, at the moment, we're looking at about 15 hours and 14 minutes of daylight. Of course, the sky this month, this session is going to sit squarely on top of the solstice, which happens on June 21st at 5:14 in the morning. So we've got days growing a little bit longer until the 21st, and then gradually shortening a little bit by the time of our next meeting on July 6th. But basically, we're looking at 15.25 hours of daylight and the corresponding short night periods. We also get Earth at aphelion, or its farthest distance from the sun. That'll occur next month on July 4th. So in terms of when the sky is dark after sunset or before sunrise, we deal with the concept of astronomical twilight. An astronomical twilight is the period when the sun is between 12 and 18 degrees below the horizon. Once it gets more than 18 degrees below the horizon, we consider the sky is as dark as it's going to get. And that's the block of time when the imagers are really interested in doing all their data gathering and so on. And of course, if you want to start your stargazing, your telescope observing, you can get into that during the astronomical twilight period, but really the imaging is when you want to begin that. Unfortunately, because of those long daylight times, we have short nights. So we've only got 4 hours and 14 minutes of imaging. The astronomical twilight period ends at 11:08 tonight and resumes at 3:22 a.m. tomorrow morning. And then 5 weeks from now at our next meeting, we're still only at 4 hours and 6 minutes of imaging time because of astronomical twilight ending at 11:19 and resuming at 3:25 in the morning. Speaking of the moon, so these are the perigee and apogee dates when the moon is closest and farthest. The perigee comes into play here because the June 14th full moon, the full strawberry moon, will be a supermoon. So this supermoon is defined to be a moon that's full at the same time as it's, say, within 90% of its closest distance to the Earth, or perigee. And this supermoon, the moon will be full about 13 hours before the perigee, which allows those to sync up and give you that supermoon effect. Of course, the supermoon in the sky will only be a few percent larger and a few percent brighter than average. It's not something that most people would notice. It's a bit like comparing the size of a loonie and a toonie held at arm's length. So a little bit bigger, but you probably won't notice if you weren't aware of it. Of course, the first quarter moon will happen on June 7th, so on Tuesday. Then we've got the full moon, and our best dark sky observing period happens between the third quarter and new moon period. It's around a little more than a week, so about, say, 9 or 10 days worth before the moon gets too much of a bother in the evening sky again. And that's going to run from June 20th to June 28th. Now, something interesting is that a few times a year, when the sun is at a particular angle as it's rising over the lunar horizon, we get the effect of the lunar X and the lunar V, and in some cases the lunar L, and of course craters are O, so you can make all kinds of letters on the moon if you want. So that's happening this month, and that will happen on June 6th, so Monday, June 6th, but it's going to be in daytime for us here in the GTA. It's going to peak. The lunar X will start forming around 5 p.m. Eastern time, peak around 6:30, and then take another hour and a half to dissipate or fade away again. And so that's going to be actually in a daytime sky. Now, you can look at the moon in your telescope or binoculars in a daytime sky. One tip that you can try using is wearing polarized glasses. Even the 3D glasses from the movies will increase the contrast in a daytime sky, darken the sky, and brighten the moon. So that's something you can try. The V is up here, so the X is down here just below the lunar equator. That's about, I think it's about 21 degrees south lunar latitude. The lunar V is up along the terminator in the sort of the north 40, 45 degree zone. And then the L is down here, kind of down here near this sort of Mickey Mouse trio of craters that form Mickey Mouse's face. So you can look for the L just a little bit to the south of that. If you're interested in finding out more details about the moon's phases, I highly recommend this website. It's a NASA tool that's online. It's called the Lunar Libration and Phase Tool. And what you can do is you can dial up the moon at any hour of any day of the year for 2022. When we get to 2023, they'll upload a fresh one. And if you click on any of those hours, you can then get a visualization of the moon's phases in detail. And if you click on that image itself, it'll download a detailed, a very high-res tile or image that you can see underneath here, which gives a lot more details about the moon at that particular hour, including some annotations. And there's also a version of that link for Newtonian telescopes where the moon is flipped upside down if you want something that will match your eyepiece view. I've got a couple of comets, and in a minute or two, I'm going to switch over to Stellarium and show you kind of a live view of some of these. But two comets to look out for in the next little bit is Comet C 2017 K2 Pan-STARRS. And that comet is observable all night long in the constellation of Ophiuchus, which is kind of in the southern sky in evening. It's at magnitude 9.5 and brightening, so really it's a backyard telescope or bigger telescope object if you can get to especially if you can get to a dark site. A couple of neat things is on June 19th and 20th, so it's traveling west through Ophiuchus, and on the 19th and 20th, it's going to pass just on the southern outreaches of this open cluster IC4665, nicknamed the Summer Beehive cluster. Fairly big open cluster. And then the next couple nights, it's going to pass very close to the bright star Sabalrai in Ophiuchus. So that would be a good way to figure out that you're in the right location. The other comet there to keep an eye out for is Comet C 2021 P4 Atlas. It's in the northwestern sky right after dusk, so it's not as favorable or nicely placed as the previous one. But it's going to spend the month traveling along the body of Lynx, so traveling west to east across the constellation. It's a bit dimmer. It's magnitude 11. It's still in the process of brightening. It's going to pass on July 5th the UFO galaxy, NGC 2683, which is a potential imaging night for that. And again, I can show you where those are in Stellarium here in a minute. If you're interested in watching the space station fly overhead, the International Space Station series of passes is ending tomorrow, and then it won't return until it returns in the pre-dawn on June 26th. And when it does that, I've got a couple of extremely bright passes noted here on the 27th and the 30th. It's just the times that they won't get me out of bed. But if anybody's really keen, you can get up early and see the space station. Or just wait another few weeks or a month and it'll be back in the evening sky again. For those interested in the Chinese space station, it will resume pre-dawn passes on June 10th, and there may be some. It's much dimmer than the ISS. It's magnitude +1 as opposed to -3.7. So it's quite a bit dimmer, but you can certainly see it. And once they do launch that additional module, it might be something to keep an eye out for to see if you can see both pieces or the resulting brighter piece when it's assembled together. June 12th at 10:15 p.m., the nearly full moon will occult the magnitude 2.35 star double star Disheba. Disheba is one of the claws of Scorpius, so Delta Scorpii. The dark, barely dark, so it's a very thin dark edge of the moon. It's nearly full at that point, but the dark edge of the moon will cover the two stars at 10:14:40 in the GTA, and then the stars will reappear at about 10:55:26. And what's neat is because this is a double star and they've got a little separation that they'll wink out one at a time about 8 seconds apart. So not that 8 seconds doesn't refer to the distance apart from the stars, it refers to the delay time in the moon hiding and then revealing the stars again, an 8-second delay. So that's kind of a fun one to look for. If you're interested in looking at variable stars, one of the ones you can take note of at this time of the year and deeper into the summer as we go is Chelyabinsk, also known as Beta Lyrae. And Chelyabinsk, if you think of the star Vega, which would be up here out of the view, and then the parallelogram of the constellation of Lyra, and Chelyabinsk is the star in the sort of western, northwestern corner of the parallelogram. It's an eclipsing binary system, so we have two stars, one orbiting the other. And because the orbits are not edge on to the Earth, then we don't have a full eclipse happening. We have always some of each of the two stars in sight, and so you do get a dual lobe or double dip in this brightness variation. So it varies by a full magnitude, so that's about a factor of 2 in brightness over 12.94 days. So when you head outside, you can take a look at Chelyabinsk and compare it right away. How does it compare with delta? If it's the same as delta on the opposite, then it's at its minimum. If it's the same as Siliphat at the bottom of the parallelogram, then it's near its maximum. So you can instantly do your own variable star observing just with your unaided eyes, which is a fun one. All right, let's switch over and do some Stellarium here. So the moon is going to do a number of really cool things this month because it's going to be paying a lot of visits to a lot of celestial objects. So first of all, tonight, if you happen to be out before it's dark, you can take a look for the young crescent moon shining in the northwestern sky, just to the right of the bright star Metsuta in Gemini. And then if you've got binoculars, I'll put up a ring for binoculars here so we can see this. Markings. This 6-degree ring is about binoculars ring. So the asteroid Ceres, or dwarf planet, formerly asteroid Ceres, will be shining a little bit to the lower right of the moon. Magnitude 8.9, so it's not going to be an easy thing to see in the twilight. By the time the sky is dark, they'll be getting kind of low, but it's something that you may want to take a look and see if you can see. Then as we head a little bit deeper into the month, so we're going to get the moon passing close to the Beehive star cluster in Cancer around the 3rd of the month. And through the evening, the moon will move a little bit closer to the cluster. I'll just bring up the deep sky symbols here where you can see the Beehive cluster. And again, these will kind of fit together in your binoculars, but really if you want to see the V's the best amount, just stick the moon outside the field of view a little bit, just so its brightness isn't dominating your binoculars field of view. Now we're going to jump way ahead to the next interesting event that the moon is going to get up to around, by this point, we're going to get into deep in the evening. All right. So towards the 18th of the month, we're going to see the moon do its monthly pass by all the morning planets. So all the morning planets are visible in the AM. All the bright planets are in the AM right now. Let me just wind back here so everybody can see the sky around 5 in the morning. So here's the eastern sky around 5 o'clock in the morning. You've got Venus. So Saturn rises first around just after midnight, and Saturn will soon join the evening sky. It'll soon be rising before midnight, before the end of June. A little while after that, we get very bright Jupiter joining the party, and then Mars. If you're paying attention to Mars and Jupiter over the next little bit, if you're up early the next few mornings, we're going to see Mars and Jupiter much closer together, and Mars's faster speed is going to be increasing its distance, increasing its separation from Jupiter all through the month here. And then we've got Venus rising a little bit later, so we're creating this nice long chain of planets that are defining the plane of our solar system. And then Mercury pops its head up last of all. Mercury is going to be increasing its separation until about, let's see under here. So we've got Mercury at maximum elongation around the 16th of the month. So that'll be your sort of best time to see Mercury, although not a particularly good apparition for us in the GTA because Mercury is well south of this tipped over morning ecliptic. So that's something you can put on your calendars for around the 16th of the month. It doesn't matter if it's cloudy on the 16th. Several mornings around that date will be nearly as good. As I said, in the meantime, you've got the moon starting to visit all these planets. So back here, we had the moon on the 18th. Coming in, here's the moon down here on the 18th. And a number of photo ops. So you can get a couple of days later, you've got Jupiter and the moon. And if you want to get up a little bit early, you can get some stars around them and a bit of a nicer view. Then on the 22nd, the moon will sit below and between Jupiter and Mars. And we march a bit further along. The moon is actually going to pass Uranus. Now, Uranus is not going to be particularly visible for us because it's sort of in this morning twilight, and you can get up a little earlier and it will be in a darker sky. But what is interesting is that the moon will actually occult Uranus for parts of the world, not visible around here. Then we get to the 25th or so, 26th. We've got a really nice photo op of the old crescent moon shining above the horizon. If you can get yourself positioned in a nice spot with some nice scenery in the foreground, get a really pretty picture of the moon shining next to Venus. And then I'm just going to bring this up a little higher. You get the moon finally visiting Mercury to end the month. Again, not a particularly easy one to see with the moon and Mercury in the twilight, but just for completeness, I'll mention that. Another interesting thing is back to Venus for a second. So Venus is actually going to pass telescope close to Uranus. Let me just bring that up for you to see. Oh, and by the way, when you're viewing the moon and Venus on the 26th, don't forget to see if you can check out the Pleiades. The Pleiades will be gleaming in the twilight, and when you look at the Pleiades during the twilight sky, that's when you truly do see the 7 stars of the 7 sisters. If you see the Pleiades in a nighttime sky, it can be a little confusing where anybody came up with the idea of 7, but I found when I see it in the twilight that it's really there. All right, so put Venus here in the center and go back a little bit. And what we're going to get is Venus is going to encounter Uranus. So Venus is moving sunward fairly rapidly. It'll hang around in the eastern sky for a while yet, but I know it's low, but these two will be actually about 1.7 degrees apart, so just able to fit together in the eyepiece of a low power telescope for a couple mornings. All right, let's see what else we've got here. All right, so let's go back to tonight and bring up the southern sky here. So when you're looking at, let's mention some suggestions for deep sky observing. One of the things that you're going to want to do is pay attention to the meridian line. So when objects are close to the meridian line, they're at their highest in the sky. And their highest in the sky means that you're seeing them the most clearly. So for the next couple of nights before the moon gets too bright in our sky, I'm suggesting that folks maybe take a look at some of the northerly galaxies. I did mention a couple of these in the current issue of Sky News magazine. One of them is the NGC 4725. So let's bring this one up here. So Coma is already starting to set, down into the western sky, but it's still relatively bright, relatively high at 11 p.m. So this galaxy NGC 4725, it's actually the brightest non-Messier galaxy in Coma. So once you're clear with the Messiers and you want to try something new, have a look at this one. It's this magnitude reported here in Stellarium of 12.44 is incorrect. It's actually magnitude 9.4. So if you've downloaded the more recent versions of Stellarium, these errors have been corrected in some of these deep sky galaxies. But I'm using an older version, and it reports an incorrect magnitude. Another one you can go for is the Whale. So the Whale galaxy is nearby. That's the one that has the little associated galaxy that looks like the spouting whale. And then, of course, in the same telescope view, you can look for the hockey stick or crowbar galaxy kind of right nearby, just to the south of it, celestial south of it. And then last up, if you're going to look for a really nice galaxy, you can look for the Cocoon Galaxy. Here, where's my Cocoon Galaxy? Oop, it's up here in Canis Venatici. Here we go. Here's the Cocoon. So the Cocoon Galaxy is easy to find. If you find the constellation of Canis Venatici, the two stars, so Cor Coralie is a double, and then Chara, just take that line and just extend it by another half degree, just the moon's diameter, and you get this nice two in the view, 2-for-1 galaxies. The one galaxy is gravitationally distorting the larger galaxy, so this is actually an ARP, one of ARP's peculiar galaxies, NGC 4490. So that's the Cocoon. Then what I suggested we do at the next dark sky, so we're kind of done with galaxies for the year. So what we can do is head on into something later in the month, so in early July, somewhere around, after the 20th when the sky is nice and dark. So maybe spend some time looking at the constellation of the Herdsmen, Booties. And one of the things that they've got in here, we don't have any Messier objects in this constellation, but we do have nearby Messiers. So we've got the Pinwheel just up here in Ursa Major. We've got the M102 Spindle Galaxy up near Draco, and then we've got M3 in the neighborhood just in next door Canis Venatici. But in terms of deep sky objects, Booties has this great snow globe cluster. The snow globe cluster is kind of on the smaller side of globular clusters, but it's actually one of the Rask's finest NGC objects. It's magnitude 9.7 or so, and you'll find that it's not very dense. So it's not as kind of magnificent as M13 would be in Hercules. And then it's got Booties. The Herdsman has a really nice galaxy down here in the corner. This is not a Messier, but it's a Caldwell object, NGC 5248. It's a really pretty spiral galaxy, and there's so much activity going on in the spiral arms that you can really, if you've got a larger telescope in darker skies, you can look for some, structure in the eyepiece, and of course in imaging. It's a great target as well. One of the neat things is if you are planning to image this galaxy, is note that it's got these terrific extensions to the spiral arms that stretch far beyond the bright core, and so you can really pick up some really nice image when you go up to that one. Just a few more things to look at in Booties. It's full of terrific double stars. So there's the star Izar, which is a great star for backyard telescopes. Then you can head on up to Theba, which is Delta Booties. It's an easy double. It's a wide double. And in that area, we're going to get into, where's my Acalerops? Where's my Acalerops here? Go. Acalerops is a terrific star because it's actually an easy double, just almost binoculars, almost naked eye, but binoculars. And then in a telescope, the secondary star splits. So you've got actually a triple in the view. And then near to that, we've got a little bit to the north is the nice pair, nice wide pair of Nu 1 and Nu 2 Booties, which are different colors, similar brightness, but different colors. And then up near the north of the constellation, we've got the Donkeys. So these three little stars up here near the handle of the tip of the handle of the Big Dipper, they're called the Donkeys, Acellus, Primus, Secundus, and Tertius. And Secundus and Tertius both split into doubles. And these are part of the RASC double star program. So you can see Acellus Secundus is a little bit wider than Tertius. Those are a great one as well. Last up is the star Booties, which is a variable star. This one's sitting kind of in the center of the kite, just not too far from Izar. It's a faint, magnitude 10 star, kind of a reddish M-class star. But this one is a Myra-type variable star. It ranges between magnitude 6 and magnitude 13, which is a huge difference over 223 days, and it's currently approaching its peak. So I'll just share with you the light curve for that star. So that's the kind of variability that you get in that star. And I think that's it. Oh, the only other thing I was going to mention is that if you just want to head out and look at the constellation, you can look for the kite string. So Booties has this kite shape, and down here, kind of between the herdsman's legs, you can look for this chain of stars, which are his kite string. And just to finish up here, I'm just going to list you the highlights. So that's a summary of the most interesting events of the month, and you can always capture that on your screen and mark your calendars. And that's it.
Wonderful. Thank you very much for that, Chris. Wonderful presentation as always. Emma, do we have any questions?
We don't have any questions, but we do have one comment coming in from Eric Briggs. The space station was flying over at dusk on Monday at the moment we arrived at our observing site for the meteor shower.
Fantastic.
Great, that's it.
Thanks a lot.